I gripped the steering wheel as we turned off the main road. Felix pointed toward a structure rising from the hillside like a concrete finger against the gray sky. "There," he said. "The old Meridian Observatory." I'd never heard of it. The building looked abandoned, its white dome stained with rust streaks and bird droppings. Weeds pushed through cracks in the parking lot where we stopped. "How did you find this place?" I asked. "Research." Felix smiled, that particular expression he wore when he had secrets. "It closed in 1987. Budget cuts. But the structure's still sound." I followed him toward the entrance, our footsteps echoing off empty walls. The lobby smelled of dust and old paper. A metal door marked "Observation Deck" hung slightly ajar. "The telescope's still up there," Felix said, testing the handle. "Partially dismantled, but the main assembly remains." We climbed the narrow staircase, our breathing the only sound. At the top, double doors opened onto the rooftop. The city sprawled below us, distant lights beginning to flicker on as evening approached. Felix moved to the telescope housing. The massive instrument sat motionless, its brass fittings tarnished but intact. He ran his hand along the eyepiece mount. "Imagine what this saw," he murmured. "All those years, watching the stars." I walked to the railing, looking out over the horizon. The air was cooler up here, carrying the scent of pine from the surrounding hills. "Why did you want to come here?" I asked. Felix joined me at the railing. "I told you, true desire reveals itself in forgotten places." I heard footsteps on the stairs below us. "That's my friend," Felix said before I could ask. "He's wanted to see you here for a long time." My stomach dropped. The footsteps grew closer, deliberate and unhurried. I turned to face the door as a man emerged onto the rooftop. He was tall, maybe 40, with dark hair and darker eyes. He wore jeans and a black sweater, nothing remarkable, but something about his presence made the space feel smaller. "Naomi," Felix said. "This is Rowan." Rowan nodded at me, then at Felix. "Thanks for bringing her." The casual familiarity in his voice sent heat up my neck. I looked between them, trying to understand what I'd walked into. "How long have you two known each other?" I asked. 6 months, Felix said. "We met at the photography exhibit downtown." "The one about urban exploration," Rowan added. "Felix mentioned you shared his interest in abandoned places." I remembered that exhibit. Felix had gone alone while I worked late. He'd come home with stories about the photographer's adventures in forgotten buildings, but he'd never mentioned meeting anyone. "What exactly is this about?" I asked. Rowan moved closer to the telescope, running his fingers along the same brass fitting Felix had touched. "Your husband thought you might find me interesting." "In what way?" Felix stepped behind me, his hands settling on my shoulders. "You know what way, Naomi." The city lights blurred below us. I felt caught between them, Felix's familiar touch and this stranger's unwavering gaze. The evening air carried a chill that made me shiver. "I should go," I said. "Should you?" Rowan asked. I didn't leave. The stars emerged as we talked, scattered across the darkening sky like scattered coins. Rowan told me about the places he'd explored: abandoned theaters, empty hospitals, forgotten train stations. His voice was steady, hypnotic. Felix listened from his position by the railing, occasionally adding details or asking questions. But his attention stayed fixed on me, watching my reactions to every word Rowan spoke. "There's something about these forgotten spaces," Rowan said, moving closer. "They strip away pretense, show you who you really are." "And who am I?" I asked. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small plastic card. Hotel key card, I realized, though I couldn't read the name in the dim light. "Someone who's tired of playing safe," he said. The card felt warm when he pressed it into my palm. Felix's breathing changed behind me, becoming shallower, more deliberate. The hotel's 20 minutes from here, Rowan continued. Room 314, but that's not what this is about. What is it about? Choice. He stepped back, giving me space. Your choice. Felix moved to stand beside me. I want you to choose, Naomi. Whatever you want. The keycard seemed to burn in my hand. Below us, the city continued its evening routine, unaware of the three people standing on a forgotten rooftop, balanced on the edge of something irreversible. Why? I whispered. Because, Felix said, I love watching you discover who you are. Rowan's eyes never left mine. The question is whether you're ready to find out. The stars overhead offered no answers, only witness to whatever came next. What happened next belongs to the shadows and starlight. The city below held its breath, while I crossed a line I'd never imagined crossing. When it was over, we stood in different positions. I found myself by the telescope housing, hands shaking as I tried to smooth my hair. Rowan had moved to the far side of the rooftop, his silhouette outlined against the night sky. Felix remained at the railing where he'd watched everything unfold. I wonder if anyone else saw this, he said quietly, his voice carrying across the space between us. I looked down at my hands. The keycard was gone. I couldn't remember when I'd dropped it. The brass of the telescope felt cold under my palm, a stark contrast to the warmth still radiating through my body. The security cameras were disconnected years ago, Rowan said. This place is truly forgotten. Felix turned toward us, his expression unreadable in the darkness. How do you feel, Naomi? I searched for guilt, for shame, for any of the emotions I thought I should be experiencing. Instead, I found something else entirely. A strange sense of completion, as if I'd answered a question I hadn't known I was asking. Different, I said. Good different or bad different? I looked at both of them, these two men who had orchestrated this moment. I don't know yet. Rowan approached us slowly. That's honest. Honesty, Felix said, is what I was hoping for. The stars continued their ancient dance above us, indifferent to human complications. Felix drove home while I stared out the passenger window. The highway lights strobed past in regular intervals, marking time and distance from what we'd left behind. Say something, Felix said after 20 minutes of silence. What do you want me to say? How you're feeling, what you're thinking. I pulled down the sun visor and found a parking receipt tucked into the elastic band, not from tonight, but from somewhere else entirely. The timestamp read 3 days ago, 2:47 p.m., a hotel. When were you at the Meridian Inn? I asked, holding up the small paper. Felix glanced at the receipt, then back at the road. Tuesday. With him? Yes. I turned the receipt over. Someone had written a room number on the back in pencil. 314. The same number Rowan had mentioned. You planned this, I said. All of it. How long? Felix merged into the right lane, taking his time with the answer. Since the photography exhibit, maybe longer. Longer? Since I realized I wanted to see you with someone else, watch you discover parts of yourself you keep hidden. I folded the receipt, then unfolded it. The paper was soft from handling, worn at the edges. This is what you want for our marriage? I want truth, Naomi. I want to see all of you, not just the version you think I need. The city limit sign passed by my window. We were almost home, almost back to our regular life of morning coffee and evening news, and all the small routines that made up a marriage. And if I liked it? I asked. Did you? I looked at the receipt one more time before putting it in my purse. Yes. At home, Felix made tea while I sat at our kitchen table, still wearing the clothes that carried traces of the evening. Dust from the observatory, the lingering scent of Rowan's cologne, the weight of what we'd done. "Tell me about the first time you thought about this," I said. Felix set a mug in front of me, steam rising between us like a barrier. "Remember the Miller's anniversary party? You were talking to David Chen by the pool." I remembered. David was an architect, recently divorced, with intelligent eyes and careful hands. We'd discussed urban renewal projects while Felix mingled with other guests. "You laughed at something he said," Felix continued. "A real laugh, not the polite one you use at parties. And I realized I wanted to see more of that version of you. So you decided to orchestrate it." I decided to create opportunities. Felix sat across from me. The telescope was perfect, something to focus on while you made your choice. The tea tasted of chamomile and honey, familiar flavors in an unfamiliar conversation. Outside our kitchen window, the neighborhood was settling into its nightly rhythm. Porch lights switching on, television screens flickering blue through curtains. "What happens now?" I asked. "That depends on what you want to happen." "I want to understand the rules." "What rules do you think there should be?" I considered this. Honesty, communication, boundaries we both agree on. And if those boundaries keep changing, then we keep talking about them. Felix reached across the table and took my hand. "I love you, Naomi. All of you. Including the parts you're just discovering." Over the next 3 days, we talked more than we had in months. Not just about Rowan and the observatory, but about desire and marriage, and the spaces between what we wanted and what we thought we should want. "I keep thinking about your face," Felix said on Wednesday morning as we shared coffee on our back porch, "when you realized you had a choice." "What about it?" "You looked alive in a way I hadn't seen in years." I sipped my coffee, watching a cardinal land on our fence. "It scared me." "The choice or the feeling?" "Both." Felix set down his mug. "Do you want to see him again?" The question hung between us like morning mist, visible but not quite solid. I'd been expecting it, but hearing it out loud still sent a jolt through my chest. "Do you want me to?" "I want you to want what you want. Without guilt." "That's not how marriage works, Felix." "Maybe it's how our marriage works." I thought about conventional wisdom, about the promises we'd made 8 years ago, about the life we'd built together. Then I thought about standing on that rooftop, feeling truly seen for the first time in longer than I could remember. "I need rules," I said finally. "Clear ones." "Such as?" "No lies, no secrets. We talk about everything, even when it's uncomfortable." Felix nodded. "What else?" "We can stop this any time. Either of us, for any reason, no questions asked." "Agreed. And we decide together what happens next. Not you orchestrating, not me reacting. Together." Felix extended his hand across the small table. "Partners?" I shook it. "Partners." That evening, I called Rowan. "I wondered if I'd hear from you," he said. "Felix gave me your number." Of course he did. I could hear the smile in his voice. "How are you processing everything?" "Still working on that. Can we meet? Somewhere neutral?" "The coffee shop on 5th Street. Tomorrow at 2?" I found him at a corner table, reading a paperback novel. He looked different in daylight, more ordinary, less mysterious. Just a man with dark eyes and careful hands, drinking espresso and turning pages. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. "I needed to understand something." "What's that?" I ordered coffee from the passing waitress, buying time to organize my thoughts. Whether what happened was about you or about me. Rowan closed his book, marking his place with a napkin. And what did you decide? Both. But mostly me. He leaned back in his chair. Felix said you might figure that out. You two talk about me often? He cares about you deeply, wants you to be happy, even if that happiness looks different than he expected. I stirred cream into my coffee, watching the white swirls disappear into brown. What do you want out of this? Honestly, I find you fascinating. Your intelligence, your curiosity, the way you think through problems. And I'd like to spend time with you, see where it leads. The coffee shop buzzed with afternoon energy around us. Students with laptops, business meetings, couples sharing pastries. Normal life continuing while I negotiated the boundaries of my marriage. With Felix's knowledge and consent? Always. I pulled something from my purse and set it on the table between us, the key card from the observatory, which I'd found in my coat pocket that morning. I kept this, I said. Rowan picked it up, turning it over in his fingers. Room 314 is still available, if you're interested. I met his eyes. I am. The hotel room was simple, clean lines, neutral colors, a window overlooking the city. Rowan had arrived first and was reading by the window when I knocked. Second thoughts? He asked, opening the door. Several, but I'm still here. This time was different, slower, more deliberate. We talked first, about books, about travel, about the strange paths that had brought us together. When we finally moved toward each other, it felt like a conversation we'd been having all along. Afterward, lying in the afternoon light streaming through the window, I understood something fundamental about myself. I was capable of loving two people in different ways, of being a devoted wife and also being this, whatever this was. What are you thinking about? Rowan asked. How this doesn't feel like betrayal anymore. What does it feel like? Growth? Expansion? I turned to face him. Felix was right about desire revealing itself in unexpected places. Are you going to tell him about this afternoon? Everything. That's our agreement. Rowan traced patterns on my shoulder with his fingertip. He's a remarkable man, your husband. Yes, he is. Not many people would have the courage to want what he wants for you. I considered this. Or the courage to ask for it. Later, driving home, I thought about the different kinds of love, the steady, daily love I shared with Felix, built on years of shared experience and mutual understanding, and this newer feeling, bright and consuming and entirely separate. Both felt real. Both felt mine. Felix was cooking dinner when I came home. The kitchen smelled of garlic and herbs, familiar and welcoming. I watched him move around our space with easy efficiency, this man who knew me well enough to orchestrate my desires. How was your afternoon? He asked without turning around. Complicated, beautiful, scary. Tell me. I sat at the counter and told him everything. About the coffee shop conversation, about the hotel room, about the way I felt afterward. Felix listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but never judging. When I finished, he set a plate in front of me. Pasta with mushrooms, one of my favorites. How do you feel about it? I asked. Proud of you, for being honest about what you want. And jealous? Felix considered this while twirling pasta around his fork. Not jealous of Rowan. Maybe jealous of the discovery you're making. I'd like to find new parts of myself, too. What would that look like for you? I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. I reached into my purse and pulled out a receipt from the hotel parking garage. The timestamp read 3:47 p.m., evidence of where I'd been, what I'd done. This afternoon cost us something, I said, setting the paper between us. What did it cost us? Simplicity. the version of our marriage that never questioned itself. Felix picked up the receipt, studying the numbers and letters as if they contained important information. And what did we gain? Truth. The possibility of becoming more than we were. Is it worth it? I thought about the weight of secrets, the exhaustion of pretending to want only what was expected. Then I thought about standing in that hotel room, feeling completely myself for the first time in years. Yes, I said, but it's going to require courage from both of us. Felix folded the receipt and handed it back to me. Then we'll find courage. 3 weeks later, we returned to the observatory. All three of us this time, by mutual agreement and in daylight. The building looked different in afternoon sun, less mysterious, more obviously abandoned. But when we climbed to the rooftop, the view still took my breath away. Rowan had brought tools and was working on the telescope, trying to restore some of its functionality. Felix helped while I watched from the railing, remembering that first night when everything changed. Got it, Rowan said suddenly. The telescope swung smoothly on its mounting, responding to his adjustments. What can you see? Felix asked, peering through the eyepiece. Construction cranes downtown, the university bell tower, that water tank on Meridian Hill. I took my turn at the telescope, adjusting the focus until the distant city sharpened into clarity. Through the lens, I could see details invisible to the naked eye. Workers on a rooftop, laundry hanging from apartment balconies, the intricate architecture of buildings I'd never noticed before. It's amazing what you can see when you know how to look, I said. Felix smiled. That's what I was hoping you'd discover. The three of us stood together on the rooftop, no longer strangers navigating uncharted territory, but people who had chosen to see each other clearly. The afternoon light caught the brass fittings of the telescope, making them gleam like new. So what happens now? Rowan asked. Felix and I looked at each other, then at him. Now we keep looking, I said, and we keep seeing what we find. The observatory had been built to study distant stars, to make sense of light traveling across impossible distances. But standing there in the sun, I realized we'd been doing something similar, learning to see love and desire and marriage from new angles, discovering that some truths only became visible when you were brave enough to look. Below us, the city continued its daily business, unaware that three people on a forgotten rooftop had found a way to love without limits, to choose without shame, to build something unprecedented and entirely their own. The telescope pointed toward the horizon, ready for whatever revelations the evening might bring. The first stars began to emerge as twilight deepened, and Maya adjusted the telescope's focus with practiced precision. Through the eyepiece, Jupiter's bands came into sharp relief, its great red spot a swirling reminder that even the most turbulent forces could maintain their beauty across centuries. Your turn, she said, stepping back to let David peer through the lens. His hand brushed hers as he leaned forward, and she felt that familiar warmth that had never dimmed, even as their relationship had evolved into something she couldn't have imagined 3 years ago. Sarah emerged from the stairwell carrying a thermos of coffee and a blanket, her hair catching the last golden light. She changed from her work clothes into jeans and Maya's oversized sweater, a small intimacy that still made Maya's heart skip. The way Sarah moved through their shared spaces now, confident in her belonging, was perhaps the most beautiful transformation of all. The Henderson account finally signed, Sarah announced, settling beside them on the blanket. 3 months of negotiations, and they decided just as I was walking out the door. David grinned, pulling her close. That's my brilliant negotiator. We should celebrate. We are celebrating, Maya said, gesturing to the emerging constellation of lights below and above them. This is perfect, and it was. Not because it was simple, Nothing about their arrangement was simple. The logistics alone required constant communication, careful scheduling, and a level of emotional intelligence that challenged all of them daily. There were still moments of uncertainty, still conversations that stretched late into the night as they navigated uncharted territory together. But somewhere in the complexity, they'd found something that felt more honest than anything Maya had experienced before. Love, she'd learned, wasn't a finite resource to be rationed or guarded. It was more like light, capable of illuminating multiple spaces simultaneously without diminishing its intensity. "Look," Sarah whispered, pointing upward. The International Space Station was making its evening pass, a steady point of light moving purposefully across the darkening sky. They watched in comfortable silence as it traced its path from horizon to horizon, carrying its crew of explorers who'd chosen to venture far beyond conventional boundaries. Maya thought about the courage it took to leave the familiar gravitational pull of Earth, to trust in untested systems and unprecedented collaborations. "I have something to tell you both," David said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that made them turn toward him. Maya felt her stomach tighten. After 2 years of stability, she'd learned to brace for the unexpected. "The architectural firm in Portland called. They offered me the senior partnership." The words hung in the evening air like a held breath. Portland was 800 miles away. Portland was a disruption to everything they'd built. Sarah reached for his hand. "David, that's incredible. You've wanted this for years." Maya watched the interplay of emotions cross his face, excitement, pride, and something that looked like fear. She understood. Success had arrived wearing the disguise of a dilemma. "What do you want to do?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. She could see it in the way his eyes lit up when he'd mentioned the offer, in the careful way he was measuring their reactions. "I want to take it," he said. "But I also want—" He gestured between them, encompassing their unconventional constellation. "This, us?" Sarah smiled, and Maya saw in her expression the same recognition that was dawning in her own mind. Love without limits meant supporting each other's growth, even when it required adaptation. "Then we figure it out," Sarah said simply. "Portland's not Mars. We're creative people." Maya nodded, feeling that familiar sense of adventure stirring. They'd already proven that love could take unexpected forms. Perhaps it could also transcend geography. The space station disappeared beyond the eastern horizon, leaving them with stars and possibilities and the quiet confidence that they'd find their way.